Welcome to the RD2BE podcast. Each week we sit down with a different registered dietitian nutritionist to showcase the diversity of opportunity in the dietetics profession. Our aim is to dismantle the notion that there is a traditional career path. I'm Carl Barnes, the registered dietitian behind the scenes of RD2BE.
And I am Jenna Warnock, the RD2BE host. Our RD guests share their stories, career paths, and advice to help students like us succeed in the profession. Welcome back to another week of the RD2BE podcast. I'm your host, Jenna, and this week we're super excited to feature a very unique guest who has found his way all the way to Alaska, being a dietitian, and also being super involved within the academy as well. And so this week we're going to be talking with Trenton Voss. He is currently a clinical dietitian who recently moved to Alaska, and he served in a variety of positions within the academy, super active in our profession, where he's the student representative on the Ascend board. He's been on the member student advisory committee, the nomination committee, the expanded standards committee. He's just been truly an active dietitian in our profession, and we're super excited to first just talk about his dietetics journey. We're planning on diving into a lot of other things regarding dietetics with Trenton in the future, and that'll include like how to apply for jobs and understanding the interview process, because Trenton truly believes in setting ourselves up for success and landing the right jobs, being as successful as we can be in the dietetic space. But first, this episode, we're going to predominantly circle around who Trenton is, how we got into the dietetics profession, and I think we'll be able to learn a lot of great things from him and his story. So Trenton, thank you so much for joining us.
Of course, Jenna, I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, no, of course. And so we typically like to start off with asking guests what led you to pursue dietetics, and how did your specific educational background and upbringing shape your journey to getting to this profession?
Yeah. So what led me to pursue dietetics? It's a really interesting question. Um, I guess it would start from all the way to believing, like when I was in high school, I was at a certain weight. I guess you could say I was like 260, and I lost a bunch of weight since then. To put this into perspective, at about 230, I'd be class 3 obese. So at 260, I think that'd be like morbid obesity. Well, I met some friends after high school, and they showed me what it was like to lose weight and to go into nutrition and look at all the different areas and aspects of what it was like to work out, to focus on nutrition and sciences and anything like that. And after a while, I got into work because I'm a non-traditional student, right? And I don't think in the dietetics field, being a non-traditional student is anywhere uncommon. If you really look at what I believe to be like the real statistics, a large proportion of our students are non-traditional students. So I could say for a lot of students that I've met, they understand this. Being separated from school for a long time is a complicated thing, right? You forget how to learn, the whole 9 yards. So I spent about 5-6 years outside of high school, and I dealt with the obesity. And after a certain time, it was like I was in a job in piping industry, and in all honesty, I hated the job. I hated every minute of it. There's nothing that I liked about it, and I found myself sitting there and being like, well, on my downtime, what would I do? I would look at nutrition. I would look at things that have to do with food and weight loss, the whole 9 yards, and I was like, man, this just doesn't really vibe, right? Like this is what I saw for my life. And well, I lost a bunch of weight, and I sought out and I was like, I'm going to help save the world, right? I'm going to help people lose all the weight that I lost. Well, getting to school and come to realize everything I knew about diet and weight loss, all of it was wrong, right? Like there's a certain point in dietetics where you realize like pretty much everything I knew about weight loss was wrong, and it's kind of a beautiful revelation, but all at once scary, because you're like, well, it's not all just as simple as calories in, calories out. There's a lot of different aspects. You got the social economic aspects, you got psychological, the whole 9 yards, right? So Yeah, one thing I want to touch on too is that I spent a lot of time in school, and um, I reached out and I found dietetics on YouTube. And originally, that's what I was going to pursue, but I asked a dietitian on YouTube, and she told me not to go for it if it's in for the money. And I'm like, really? It's like, really not for the money? So I didn't. I listened to her. So I spent 10 years in school. 3 years of my first portion of school was spent in a degree I didn't want to do in the first place. That really didn't have to do with anything that I really loved. And I ended up coming back to what I loved in the first place, despite the money. And the craziest part is that like, even though another dietitian told me that like, if you're going to go into dietetics, don't go in it for the money. I think she was completely wrong because I found the money. I pursued the money. Like if you, there's this saying that I found. It's like, if you pursue what you really love, life has a way of rewarding you, and I just put all this thoughts of money behind me because I spent almost 3 years pursuing a degree I hated in the first place, just to come back to what I wanted to in the first. It's just like, so sometimes you really got to watch out for that. If you know what you want to do, go out and pursue it, right? So what led me to dietetics was I hated my job. I saw weight loss as something that was beautiful and really motivating, because when I started changing the way I ate, it changed something in me psychologically, right? It changed my approach and my thoughts and my belief systems about myself. So I think my dietetics journey kind of started off with um, just a love for nutrition, as cliche as that may sound. It really was just a love for nutrition. Yeah.
No, and I think that's really great because you it balanced your personal experience with also just a lifelong passion that you had, and you kind of had that full circle moment, and it's a perfect representation of if you make decisions based purely off of others and not your own wants and needs, it's going to bite you in the butt eventually, and you'll probably just go back to exactly where you wanted to be in the first place. And so I'm sure you may have had like thoughts in the past where it's like, oh, if I just listened to myself in the beginning, I would have, have been where I wanted to be sooner. But I'm sure you also having the experience of being on the flip side of not doing what you want, that further invigorated you to truly pursue what you wanted and really dive deep into dietetics and truly like squeeze the lemon in the academy and in your job prospects. And I really want to highlight what you said, where if you pursue what you really love, life has a way of rewarding you.
Mm,
And Rayanne and I, we had an episode in the past where all we talked about was like salary. And that's kind of what led her to mentioning you in the sense of, yeah, like you were told to not pursue dietetics because of
hmm
the money, but you definitely like with what you said, if you truly just do what you want to do, things do typically work out. And
Yep.
it's really I'm really happy to see and hear how that has worked out for you, leading you all the way to Alaska. And when it comes to your educational experience, you said that it also took you like you said 10 years kind of throughout of just being in the education system. And
hmm
you did a lot of things as well while you were in your undergrad pursuing your master's degree, a lot of things in that sphere. And so for those who are currently pursuing their educational degree, not yet a dietitian, not yet in their job posting, how did you make the most of your education to enhance your job prospects as a dietitian? Like you currently as a dietitian, are there certain experiences that you have looking back on where you're like, this really helped prepare me for this, or this really helped me in getting to where I am today?
Yeah. So to specify again, like being a non-traditional student as well is that you don't really have the support system. You don't have mom and dad really backing you up. My parents, neither one of them have more than an associate's degree. They couldn't possibly understand what it was to pursue a degree. I never really felt like, you could have enough support systems behind you, right? And you kind of got to build that system up at first by yourself. And I'm sure for most people, it's very, very hard. It's incredibly intimidating, but you just got to step out and you just got to do it. One of a crazy time in my life, when I first started my degree, it was in San Jacinto College. It was a 2-year college. I ran up to, there was a like student organization event going on, and it had all the student organizations out. Well, again, this was like the first week of school, somewhere around there, and I saw this group, and there's this man dressed in a very nice jacket, right? Very nice sports jacket. I was like, oh, cool. Let me go see him, see what he's doing. I walk up to him and I'm like, hey, what's going on here? And he was just articulate, fast, quick, everything about him, just like, it was amazing, right? And this was Dr. Stromberg. And he had his PhD and he was a history professor there. And he also taught at the University of Houston. Well, he was like, well, this is Phi Theta Kappa, it's an international honor society. And they kind of told me about the ins and outs of it. And I was just blown away. I was like, this right here, this is the type of man that I want to be. This right here is the most amazing thing I've ever seen. And I was just like lit up. I had a fire in me, right? I had a belief system that when I first started school, I couldn't learn anything, that I didn't have the ability to take classes. I didn't have the ability to pass tests. So I slid by. Like building on the belief system that you can learn something is huge. So through the process as well, I want to specify that I took a class on Coursera called Learning How to Learn. And also what is her name? She wrote a book called The Mind for Numbers. I don't remember her name right now. But essentially, it's just like it's taking little things, and if you're separated that far from class, you have to learn how to learn, right? The little tricks, little tactics, Pomodoro method, setting timelines, taking breaks in between areas and your classes. All of this stuff, a typical student coming out of high school going into college, all of this is kind of like common sense, but it wasn't common sense for me. 10 years separated from school, no way. So in any case, I saw something in him that was like, this is amazing. This is what I can aspire to. I don't believe it's possible for me quite yet, but I think I can get there. And so couple weeks goes by, months, short time period. I see the San Jack Honor Society. I see them, and I'm like, oh man, this is cool. I sat at the desk that had this little placard with Honor Society on it. And I'm like, this could be me. I could be an honor student. Mind you, when I graduated high school, I graduated with on an IEP, right? I had like a 1.75, 1.5, something like that. I didn't even graduate at the school I was sent to. I was sent to a secondary school to graduate. So it's just like I set up with the mindset that, hey, even though the past has proved to me that I wasn't able to do something, that I can set out to do something. So I sat at it and I was like, this is amazing, you know, and I reached out to the directors of the Honor Society and I was like, hey, I want to join. And at first they said, you know, you don't actually qualify, maybe next year and this and that. And then I reached out to higher up and I was like, you know, I really want to be a part of it. And I got on, eventually they let me in and I got on their boards, you know, student organization being on the board. It was funny. But it's my in to talk to a bunch of really motivated students, be around the right people, just made me want to be better, right? Like I see what you're doing and I want to do it too. Let me be a part of the crew. So in essence, it was joining these groups and these organizations that really helped me to see that I could be more. Doing everything by myself would have been incredibly difficult because I had no one supporting me. In every area of my life, I found mentors to kind of just help bring me along, to usher me along. In fact, even through my DPD, I almost quit at the end of my DPD. But because I joined an organization, I think it's called RD Mentors, something like that. Because I joined their organization, I had a mentor that I constantly reached out to. I was like, listen, this is too expensive. I can't do this. I can't keep going. He's like, Trenton, it's all going to be expensive. I mean, we all leave with some form of debt. It's okay. You're going to be fine. Just finish. I promise you, it'll be worth it. So I ended up finishing my DPD and I attribute a large portion of that to the fact that I had mentors, other people surrounding me that poured into me and showed me that things are possible, right? And I would say that what really contributed to who I am and my ability to choose the job that I chose depended in large part by the people that I surrounded myself with. Because this probably jumping the gun a little bit, but had I not studied with a friend that I found online through Facebook when I was studying for my RD exam, had I not studied with her and kind of ushered her along and see what she got, because she passed the exam before me about a month before, and then I passed after she did. She got a job right off the bat making 1900 a week. 1900 a week. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, okay, she's setting the bar. She also didn't have a master's degree, by the way. She's setting the bar. And I'm sitting here and I'm like, I can do the same. I can do the same. It's just, there's nothing in life I think any of us can do alone, because in the confines of our mind, and in the area that we are only as capable as we believe ourselves to be. But if we have somebody else in our lives pouring life into us, raising the bar of our own standards, and we see them raising the bar of their own standards, you become a different person, right? Like it's it's not even a matter of like, oh, I have all these soft skills and I can do XYZ, or I'm smart or I'm not smart, or it doesn't even matter. It's like what it really is you get to challenge your belief systems against other people. And if you see it's possible, then you yourself set out to make it possible too. So my educational background doesn't even come from one where I was capable or even believing I was capable to accomplish anything. I mean, I didn't. I only graduated with my high school degree because I was on an IEP, right? So like coming into that and seeing that I could join an honor society, that I could join an international honor society, those types of things, and then in the projects inside of them, there is nothing in my whole degree that taught me more than being part of student organizations. Not one thing. I in all honesty, there's not anything that I could say that educated me more about how to be a better student or a better person and set out have better values than to be a part of student organization, right? Because it's much more about myself. It's not just me, I'm going to get an A. It's not just me, I'm going to have the best project ever and the professor's going to love me. It's no, I'm contributing to a larger group, accomplishing something fun or educational or purposeful. And that takes a lot of sacrifice.
No, I think that's a really great point to touch on, because I think, and I've heard this ever since I started my dietetics journey, is that a lot of people pursuing that RD credential, they think that they're competing with everyone else, especially
Mm,
with the old match process. It was competing for that one spot and that one DI, and just kind of not fighting, but just you had to be the best in
mm,
order to progress. Where I really like the lens that you were able to take from your experience of you actually have to do the opposite and work with each other to not only benefit the whole, but to benefit yourself as well, because that's where you'll get the maximum benefit. And it also shows the power of perspective, because I think another thing too that overwhelms people is we bring these guests on, listeners may see the success of this person and they're like, how the heck do I get there? And they're like, how the heck can I do the things that this person has done, is doing, will do? Where really that's why we love having guests like you, because you start from where you were at the beginning with how you graduated high school and what your thoughts were and what your beliefs were when you were going through your education. Where had you not had those people in your corner, you wouldn't have believed that you could progress. And if we stay in our little box, we're not going to go
mm,
anywhere, because you paint yourself in this box and you don't have someone to pull you out of it. You're going to stay in that box. And this is something that I think, where if someone's overwhelmed and they're like, where do I even start? You start with talking to that one guy in that cool little suit that you think is cool. And then that
yeah.
just that just starts the whole thing. Like it just starts with one conversation. And from what it sounds like, it was that one conversation that just propels everything else, because it it really, again, people, I was talking to a friend about this earlier today, where it's like people focus so much on outcomes
Mm,
of just, at the very end, you have this very nice job in Alaska. You have all these great connections, all these great positions, like volunteering in the academy, where it's like, okay, but where did that start off? You didn't
mm,
start off doing all of those things. You started off talking to just one person. And I think that's a really great takeaway that you brought out, where it just starts with talking to someone outside of your mind, because we get so caught up in what we're thinking, what our beliefs are, that we need someone to like pull ourselves out of it. But I think that's, yeah, everything that you talked about was so great and so profound with that. But before each question, please, yeah, I wanted to say if you have anything else to say.
Yeah, yeah, I want to add on to that, and I tell a lot of people this because it's like astronomical to accomplishing, I think, in anything in what I found to be the easiest thing to do everything, right? Like, there's this really good video, and it has a person on it, Will Smith, and he talks about how he had his dad had him and his brother go out and build a wall, and he's like, at first it looks so big, right? You can't go out there and set out to be the best, build the best, biggest wall ever. You can't do that, right? Because it's too much to take on. And he's like, so instead of trying to set out the biggest, best wall that you can build, you set out and you go out there and you try to lay the best possible brick that you can lay, right? It's just like you place that brick there perfectly, and it was the best one that you could lay. And then you do that over and repeatedly, over and over and over and over and over again. And eventually you have that wall. You have the best wall that you could possibly build. And it all started from building from the very base, the very small things, and then it built up to something amazing, right? Because before I even did pursued any of this, I had no idea I should go to school. I met a guy by the name of Dr. Theodore Sturdivant. He told me, Trenton, you should go to school, and I think you do have the ability to learn, and I think you should go. And I said, okay, I believe you. Somebody told me at the right time, just the right time, that like I believe that you can do something with your life. And from that point, before that, I didn't believe I could do anything in my life. And he told me I should go to school, and I believed him, and I did. When I went to school, I was like, okay, so how do I do it? And he's like, just get you a planner, right? And a regular planner, right? Need to do, hope to do, wish to do. And always have it filled out with something, some little thing. And eventually you'll have something to do all the time, and you raise yourself to whatever it is you're trying to do. And I still do that to this day, right? Need to do, hope to do, wish to do, and a very nice planner type deal, right? Something that you value, and that you can keep track of everything, right? So it's like break it down into small, simple little tasks, and you can accomplish anything in the world. But you have to specify what you define as failure and what you define as success. A lot of people don't want to acknowledge what failure looks like, because if they see it on paper as I failed to do this, it makes them feel bad. But that's good. You should feel a little bit of conviction about the things that you failed to do. But just specifying it, writing it out, at least it's going to take you somewhere, right? Um, yeah. So I mean, having Dr. Theodore come into my life like that was, I mean, that was astronomical. That helped me to specify and make these small things that you were talking about, right? Like just small little things. It makes all the difference. It is overwhelming. It absolutely is. But one class at a time. I I had every class laid out 5 years in advance. 2017 is when I first started doing it, and I did it in hierarchies. So I did it in hierarchies, like little bubbles. Okay, so fall, during the fall, I'm taking this class, this class, this class. Spring, I'm taking that class, that class, that class. I'm going to get this grade, this grade, this grade, that grade, that grade. I had it all planned out 5 years in advance. And I got really close to what I wanted. Even my salary, even my salary, right? Like you just specify what it is you want, and you do it way ahead, and then you set out little micro categories of each goal. You can, I mean, it's amazing. At least you're shooting for something. You're not like just blindly going into it and building this big wall that you have no plan for, no idea how to lay the best brick. So it makes a big difference. It really does.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think exactly what you were saying, it points to like ruthless prioritization, where
Mm,
if you just like go in and even if you don't know how big your wall is going to be, but you at least kind of know what the first brick looks like, you're
hmm
gonna you like know how to prioritize, like exactly with how you said with that hierarchy. And it's crazy how much you were able to see how accurate it was really reflecting on the other end. And I think that came from you ruthlessly prioritizing, having that need to do, hope to do, wish to do, having that like just prioritizing what was in each column. And I think every student, wherever you're at, whether you're studying for the RD exam or you're a freshman, you can absolutely use these columns to help you in anything that you're doing. And
hmm
specifically to your current job in Alaska, what I mean, there are more ways that I could eloquently put this, but what got you to Alaska? Like, you have so many wonderful, like, it sounds like you got so much great experience. You have had so many great teachers, mentors, people come your way to help tell you that you're capable. And it's great to see that you have had experiences to show that, which is hopefully then instead of, doing the, okay, I believe in you, so I'm going to do this. Now you're like, okay, I believe in me, I can do this.
Hmm.
How did you kind of get to that point to where you are now in Alaska?
Oh gosh.
It can be as short or as long as you'd like. So,
Um, if you could, so what I think you're asking is like what led me to decide to choose Alaska among all the other decisions?
yes, because um, yeah, I think not a lot of people in dietetics, I believe, envision job prospects in Alaska. And so,
Yeah, yeah. Of all the prospects I had, of all the decisions that I had, there's a few things that I thought of, and it was about my psychology, really. It was about what I thought of myself. And I said to myself, I'm like, I see my friend over here making 1,900 a week, and I know it's possible. I know it's there, it's available. I've had other jobs that offered me straight online jobs and doing dietetics assessments for research companies. That was full time, and I could have just done that in Texas too. Um, what really led me to that is I saw this I saw this sign in Texas. I was driving along, and it really it was the right sign at the right time, and it says where you go first matters most. And what it was for like MD Anderson and talking about how to get good healthcare, I guess is the way. But the way I took it was like that's exactly the way I should look at my career. The way I look at my job, right? The way I look at my job is that where I go first matters most, right? And um, if I take anything less than what I believe I'm worth, then I'm devaluing myself. There's this old proverb that goes, "Do not cast pearls before swine," because if you keep on telling people good advice who don't take it, then you're devaluing yourself. Let's not devalue ourselves, right? We're not going to devalue ourselves. We should think it's repulsive to get anything under, say, 70,000. I don't care where you are. It's like, I know that's kind of a hard statement and hard to hear, but surround yourself with people starting off making more than that, and you yourself will think you can get there too. Not that you deserve it, because I don't think anybody in anywhere deserves anything, right? We get what we believe we get, what we should have, right? You work very hard. Okay. Going into your next job. Oh, I don't have any experience. No dietitian is going to have any experience. We came out of an internship. I mean, you could have an experience as a certified nutrition manager and still not have experience as a dietitian. Some companies won't take that into consideration. So it's like let's really think this wholeheartedly through. I chose the job in Alaska because it offered me what I believed I was worth. And because it offered me what I believe I was worth, I took it. It was the best. It was the best of all the worlds I possibly could get. And I never would have gotten another opportunity like this. I know for a fact that I talked to a current DI director or a program director out in California, and he's like, "Man, I applied for a job out in Alaska once and I couldn't get it. Take this opportunity for yourself." And I was like, "Okay, so I'll do it. I'm gonna do it." And it has been just the most amazing thing ever. I'm not just in Alaska. I'm on an island in Alaska, only accessible by boat or plane. And it's incredible. But I chose here because it offered me what I believed in myself I needed. I also have a friend who works in HR, and he consults HR companies on what they should be doing. And I was going to take an offer for $40,000 a year because it was going to teach me the whole roundedness areas of how to be a RD, like work for myself. And I asked him about it, and he said, "Don't do that. Don't do that, because if I were to hire you a year later, I'm going to ask you what your salary is, and I'm going to pay you a small percentage above that." He's like, "Start high and then work around there." So he advised me not to do it. I mean, at the very minimal, it's like, okay, I'll take your advice. And that's what I did. So I had a lot of different options too. I had a lot of open offers at the time that I took the Alaska job.
Yeah, and kind of when what you mentioned, like you determined the Alaska job based off of what you believed your worth was. How did you
Mhm.
determine what your worth was? Like what helped you have conviction in yourself and what you deemed yourself as worthy for? Because I do feel like a lot of students kind of sell themselves short, or the reason why a lot of people perpetuate into these lower salary positions is because, well, I have to start low in order to build up, or I have to just
Mhm.
take what I can get and then figure it out there. And a lot of people have that opposite mindset where they don't think of their where you go first matters most. They just think
Mhm.
I just have to get in and then
Mhm.
I'll figure it out from there. So when it came to determining your worth, did that come from the mentorship? Did that come from your past experiences? Was it like a smorgasbord, if you will, of just a bunch of different things kind of helping you determine that?
Yeah, yeah, thank you. I mean, you have a great job of getting to the core. Um, I knew myself very well. I mean, I excruciatingly well. I mean, like painfully well. I have well over $100,000, not $100,000, 100,000 words written about myself since 2015. I've been over the course of my entire career of being a student, and it was a career. Um, I I wrote out my goals and what I thought about myself and where I fell short continually for 10 years. I knew myself so well. I know my motivations. I know who is um who motivates me, the people who I admire most, and then I subcategorize those people into common traits that they have. And then I put all the common traits together and I said, this is why I like them. So these are my traits, these are my values, and these are the people I admire, and this is why I admire them. And then I sought out to be like them, right? So like I created a atmosphere where I hung up on the walls the people that I admired most, and I sought to be like them in some type of way because my own identity was, in all honesty, my own identity was found in someone who couldn't accomplish anything or be anything or believe in themselves or have the capability to do anything. So it's like I almost needed to lease a parts of my personality out into people that I really aspired to be like, right? And to figure out how to find out what I was worth was to write and to articulate what I believed most about myself. And as I was writing out what I believed about myself, the next year I rewrote this maybe once or twice a year, right? Um, I do something called understanding myself, and it's writing out your past, your 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 present, and your future. And I've been doing that since 2017. So, and I've been rewriting it and adding to it and taking from it, never taking from it, but writing about. So last year, I believed that whatever wasn't capable of me. And then I go back in and I comment on it. Wow, I don't even suffer for that problem anymore. I don't believe that about myself anymore. Wow, I overcame that. I don't do that anymore. I don't even, that's not even a past me. So it was like the evolution of who I am is completely different. People that I grew up with couldn't even fathom who I am today. They couldn't even look at the same person. And I think that's one of the major purposes of education is to teach us to write and to think and to read. Like when you can write something, then you can articulate it. You can help people to understand things inside of your mind, right? Like it's not something easy, right? So when you write things down, then you can help others understand those same problems that you have and you can help them to overcome, right? Like we know dietitians who've had, to make this a little bit more easier to understand, we know we have dietitians who have eating disorders and they wrote out how they overcame them, right? And those same ways could help other patients, right? But had they not wrote out in some short way how they achieved what they had, then they wouldn't have been able to really articulate it to other people. I had an eating disorder. Now I don't. That doesn't help anybody. I had an eating disorder. And then I started laying out why each food didn't work with me, or why I overate each food, or why I avoided each food. And then I laid out, say, a hierarchy of foods that were something I avoided, right? There's just There's 1,000 different reasons. And of them all, I know what I'm worth because I know who I am. A lot of people you'll see, and I've read this in a few books, right? People will surprise themselves when they do things, how they react. Sometimes they say, wow, I didn't even know I was capable of that. But like when I react to things, I know that's who I am and that's how I react to things, right? Because I know myself. I know that I have my successes and I have my failures, right? And it's consciously bringing them out, right? There's a portion or there's this common belief in Jungian psychology. It says, until you make the unconscious conscious, life will happen to you and you'll call it fate. That's why we need to face that which is down and deep and dark inside of us, put it onto paper and say, hey, this is where I fall short. This is where I could be better. This is what I believe my worth is. Okay, so this is what I believe my worth is. Let me value myself a little bit more next year. Let me set out a 5-year plan, a 2-year plan, a 6-month plan to overcome this inadequacy that I believe is inside of me, right? Because you don't have to live your whole life. I counsel patients currently right now who still have problems with their weight at 80 years old coming to me for weight loss. And I'm sorry, but I don't tell them this, right? It's in my mind. I'm like, okay, at 80, I don't think this should be something you should be worried about. Let's get you walking. Let's keep you healthy, right? So it's like these expressions should be something that you have on paper. And just knowing your values, knowing yourself, knowing who you are, and writing it down and keeping track of it and touching base with it, oh, it'll bring all kinds of beautiful things out of you. It'll show you what you're capable of. It'll show you your accomplishments over the years. And you can use those same accomplishments to build the story of your life for your interview, right? It could help you build the story of your life for your interview. Because we all know people who come and go into the interview, tell me about yourself. Oh, I went to school. I got my bachelor's here. Oh, okay, that's cool. Well, tell me a bit about yourself. Oh, well, I love to put things together. I fix everything around me. I put these bikes together. I learned so much about computers because they were broken down and terrible, and I wanted to fix that. And what that really shows you is that I can take broken things and make them better. So it's about building the story of your life and portraying it to others. But if you don't know yourself well enough, you can't tell other people the story.
Yeah, and it's literally going back to know thyself. And
Mm,
just, I think there's so many like good things I could take apart from everything that you've just said, like the consciousness, because this is another thing too, where like with what you said is the first step is just being aware. Like and
yeah.
to any like conflict resolution, the first step is recognizing that, and not just conflict resolution, but just, identifying what your worth is or who you are. The first step is being aware that it's even
Mm,
there. And I think the first thing that I thought of with all the wonderful things that you said was first, when it came to um, reflecting and writing and kind of documenting, we live in an age where there's so much documentation out there, like on social media, but it's only the highs. You only
mm,
see the top picture of all the people around you. And so that's why I think there's that more dissonance in our
mm,
limiting beliefs because we
mm,
see the highest version of other people. That's the easiest thing to see. And so we're
yeah.
like, well, I can never get there because
Right.
we're also our worst critic. And so we're
Mm,
comparing someone's highest to our possible lowest. And so there's just this huge disconnect, even greater, where you're like, I can't do that because look at what they're doing. Where
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
instead, with
mm-hmm,
the journaling, with the writing down, when you write down both the good, bad, the ugly, everything, you're being
mm-hmm,
honest with yourself. You find out
mm-hmm,
because you're not just who you are at your best. You're more so who you are at your worst because really adversity brings out who we really are. And that's also something that I really just kind of have digested more recently, where
mm,
how you respond with the worst things that life throws at you, whether it's like, hating your current job or losing your job or like even if it's just like a small bad experience. Like for me, just to pull from a little aside of what you said, where you have certain experiences that can either really help improve you or really send you down this like negative self-worth rabbit hole,
mm,
is I had a public speaking opportunity last semester, and
mm,
in my eyes, I completely fumbled the ball. Like
mm,
I went down this terrible rabbit hole of I'm I didn't see myself valuable enough to be presenting. I just didn't feel qualified. I didn't feel like I was worthy of being there presenting. And
Mm,
in looking back on that experience, because of that limiting self-belief, is why I honestly ended up not performing as well as I did.
mm,
Whereas if I was just like, hey, I was asked to present this for a reason, therefore let
mm-hmm,
me bring that to the table. But
mm,
honestly, because of that bad experience, I now do Toastmasters, which is like the public speaking, like it's just an international public speaking club. I now do that twice a
mm-hmm.
month and I love it.
Oh,
But
somebody.
yeah,
Mm-hmm,
and so it's like I wouldn't have, if I didn't have that negative experience of knowing
mm-hmm.
myself and identifying, oh, I could improve on my public speaking, it
Yep.
wouldn't have sent me down this road of self-improvement. But you have to first recognize the gaps,
Mm,
exactly to what
yeah.
you said. Yeah.
Let me add to that. So what you're speaking about and what I speak about is one of the most profound books I've had read during my whole career. Growth Mindset by Carol Dweck. Right? So inside of us, we all have these limiting belief systems. One of them is the fixed mindset. The fixed mindset, oh, I messed up, I must be stupid. And then you start doing things that stupid people do. So you just keep on tearing yourself down. Whereas there's this other beautiful, whole nother beautiful side, right? It's called the growth mindset. On the growth mindset, you did something a stupid person would do. You made a terrible mistake, and you did. You fumbled the ball, right? But you didn't take it like that. You're like, you know what? I failed at this, but let me try again. Let me keep going, right? Like let me write out. Oh, I'm gonna write out how I messed up. I messed up this way, this way, this way, this way, this way, this way. Now, you know what I'm gonna do from now on? I'm just gonna bring my personality because they asked me to do this for a reason. They asked me to do this for a reason. And that self reassurance, that brings you even more courage. It brings you even more excitement to do that which you should do. And a lot of people get something wrong. Let me tell you about passion. Passion is not something you have first and foremost, but passion is derived from being really good at something. The better you are good at something, the more passionate you become at it. It's kind of a crazy antithesis from what society wants you to do. Go out and pursue your passions, go do this and that. No, you found out that you were really good at that, at something. And this being really good at something was formed, right? Was developed. Maybe you didn't know it was being developed inside of you. You were just doing what you like to do. And then all of a sudden you got really good at it. And then you became passionate about it, right? So, like, for me, when I found my dietetics portion, I knew there was going to be a portion of writing. There's going to be a portion of people. There's going to be a portion of speaking. There's going to be a portion of psychology. All of these roundabout things fit inside of me that I'm already good at. And therefore I'm passionate about it. It's beautiful, right? And it's this beautiful thing, right? If you know what you're good at and you go and pursue that job, because that's one thing too, is you have to know that this job is right for you. And to know this job is right for you is to know there's going to be writing. There's going to be some public times where you're going to be educating. There's going to be some times of XYZ. But just knowing that is going to help you become passionate about it. And yeah, so I wanted to touch base on that.
No, yeah. And I really like how these types of conversations it's building after the next thing and kind of linking back to when it comes to knowing how an aspiring RD can know what their value and what their worth is. I think going back to what you said, like writing, thinking, and reading, but
Mm-hmm.
again, not from a place of self-limitation of, writing about all the ways you're bad or like that you
Mm-hmm.
suck or thinking about all the ways that you're bad or that you suck or reading
Yeah.
like it's again applying it in that growth
Yeah.
way of
Uh-huh.
like, and I can see this and linking it to how, again, the people that you surrounded yourself with, the experiences that you had in undergrad and in your master's degree program, and going into this job that you have in Alaska, you connected, I'm sure, like depending on the experiences that you want to grow at, like some of them could be more writing heavy where you could get more experience or more reading heavy, like critically looking at literature. I'm taking we call it journal club, but it's critical analysis of the scientific literature. And that
Mm.
is a gap I didn't know I had until
Mm-hmm.
I had a friend who was taking it. And again, if I didn't have that connection, they'd be like, hey, do you want to take this class? And I was like, sure. I had no idea what I was getting into. But like, because of that experience with these people, I'm like, wow, this is something that I
Mm.
now know that I need to improve on. And so I think, yeah, like we've covered so many great things about just being consciously aware, how to know how to value yourself, but kind of bringing it back, to the basis of not being overwhelmed by this wall how
Mm,
to start with each perfect brick, I think it goes back to the writing, thinking, and reading. And
hmm
if any student doesn't really know where to start, I think starting with those three things, like, should I
hmm
be reading more? Should I be writing
mm,
more? Or should I be thinking
hmm
more? Or if I need to do a
mm,
couple of all three,
mm,
where can I apply those things either in extracurriculars, my work, or with the
hmm
people that I talk to?
Yeah.
Because I think those are the foundations that lead you to being a good student and then that good interview applicant, because then once you know yourself, you
Mm,
know the story to tell, and it won't be as stressful, I feel like, because you're just going to be, you're honest, you're just going to be
hmm
saying what's true. And
Right. Yeah.
mhm,
Yeah, for sure. For sure. When you get into that interview process, you're just telling them about your life story. And
yeah.
that all started on class one, day one.
hmm No,
Right?
yeah, and it's not just and it's similar to like to the analogy that you said with someone sharing their eating disorder. It's not just, oh, I had an eating disorder and I overcame it. You didn't just go to school and then you graduated. You had a
Right.
whole thing that happened in the middle of that.
Yeah.
So,
Where's the story in that? Tell
ex
the story in that.
yes, exactly. And it starts with exactly the things that you laid out, which was so, so great. And I think we've covered a lot of really great things about how to develop the right mindset
Hmm
when students are like in their DPD or they're in grad school. Are there
hmm
any other, like, and kind of just to summarize a little bit, it's for developing the right mindset, it's, kind of being specific, like ruthlessly,
hmm Yeah.
prioritizing, writing,
hmm
thinking, and reading,
hmm
documenting not just the highs, but also the lows,
hmm
kind of splitting your life into the need to do, hope to do, wish to do,
hmm
and then that mentorship piece of connecting yourself with the
Yeah.
people around you, really making the most of that.
Yep.
Do you think that those, which I mean they're quite profound and very like they're definitely transformative even if we left it at that, but are there any other mindsets or things that you think students should cultivate or think about when they're in their education, just if there was anything that we didn't touch on or anything else that comes to mind?
Yes, because I worked as a student ambassador at San Jacinto College. When I was doing that, what I found was that most of the students came into here and they didn't plan it, right? So this is really something really important is you should plan out your degree plan so that you're not taking medical nutrition therapy with your organic chemistry. I've seen so many students fail out that way. It was incredible. But it's just kind of overcoming this belief system that you need to do 4 classes at a time. I was working somewhere anywhere from about 1 to 2 to sometimes 3 jobs at a time, and with all the organizations, right? And it wasn't because, well, a lot of it was because I had to, right? XYZ. What you need to do is know how many classes you can do a semester and trust the process. That was huge. Know how many classes. When I was in my associates, I never did more than 3 classes at a time because I was working all the time, right? Or I was in the student organizations, and those student organizations contributed more than my classes did to me, honestly, in the soft skills. Because you could teach any person to do almost any job. At least in our field. If you graduate, then you know that you can teach almost any person almost any job. But those soft skills, those belief systems, those are things that jobs look for, but consciously it's like not stated. Inside of the questions that they're going to be asking you is kind of a revelation of your belief system, right? Tell me about a time that you had a disagreement with your boss and what happened through it. Oh man, how do I answer that question? Well, you don't want to answer in such a way that blames the boss for being a bad boss. You're going to bring that in, right? That's kind of like a passing off of accountability. Radical accountability comes from the core and soft skills that you learn from being in these organizations. But something that's huge is that know that how many classes is really logistically possible for you so you can get good grades while also doing other activities. You have all the time in the world to grow up. You have all the time in the world to grow up, right? Right. Like when you get your job, it's just the job, right? It's just the job and life, right? So take full advantage of all of the things that are being given to you while and being poured into. You'll have mentors everywhere that just want to pour into you while you're in school. Take full advantage of that, right? It doesn't matter what school you went to either, right? You can drop an average student off into and they just spend 4 years inside of a library, and you can drop an average student who really doesn't try in an Ivy League college, and the person who spent their entire time in that library is going to come out better than the Ivy Leaguer. And that will show across when they get into their job. That will show. These small things will show. So when you get into your career, when you get into school, you start your school, know what's realistic for you. Don't do 4 classes because that's what you're supposed to do and you're in a rush. No, try to squeeze every bit of information that you can out of it, every skill out of it, right? And a lot of those skills come from doing things that are much more than, oh, just give me the grade, just give me the knowledge, just give me the skills. No, like throw all that away. Like really pursue something that's bigger than yourself and really pursue to develop yourself. Because that's really what it's about. Is like developing the ability to tell people things, explore things, think critically about things, and identify with things and figure out who you are and how you're going to contribute to society. Life is very lonely if you're only worried about yourself. Life is very lonely. So like just think about how you can give back and focus on those classes. And that's something that I just found huge inside of a community college, is that taking the right amount of classes so you can also get good grades matters. Okay, so take 3 classes if you have to. If you're a brand new college student and you're second career and you have nobody pouring into you, nobody helping you, take 2 classes and be really good at it. You're going to get way more than anybody you could ever imagine, right? Like, man. So I think take the classes that you can realistically do and do not rush the process. If you can, if you're on a scholarship and you have to do 4 classes, do it. You know, that's understandable too. I completely understand that.
No, for sure. And it's like working with the cards that you're dealt as well, because exactly
Mm,
to what you said, where you can have someone from an Ivy League school and someone who was just in a library for 4 years have 2 very different outcomes. It depends on how they handled the cards that were dealt to them. The student in the
mm,
library can be much more successful just because they've accepted this, like accept the things that you can't change. But, I
right?
don't know how the proverb goes fully, but, it's like
Yeah,
have the wisdom to know the difference between what you can and cannot change pretty much. Whereas
yeah.
if you just kind of react to everything that's thrown at you, you don't have that time to know yourself, to understand what
Mm,
your gaps are, to really truly grow, because you're just spending all this time reacting to the things that are happening to you. And I
mm,
think to the note of, taking less classes if you can, I think if someone is still feeling overwhelmed about, well, how do I form a mentorship relationship? How do I like really actually get connected with people? When you allow yourself to be fully immersed in a class, that gives you more opportunity to connect with a professor and to
mm,
actually, and I think professors are a really great starting point in understanding what a mentorship can be, because
mhm,
my first mentors were for sure professors, or just kind
mhm,
of those traditional mentors in a sense, where you already have the structure of a class that you have to go to. You see this professor 1, 2, 3 times a week. You
mhm,
see them regularly. You have the structure of how to develop mentorship already there. It's just up to you to foster it. Now, there's some professors that you want absolutely nothing to deal with, and that's totally fine. If you
yeah,
just have to
yeah.
if you just have to go into a class, take that class, going back to what you're saying, then you ask yourself, how will this help me? Like
Mm,
if you hate organic chemistry,
mhm,
how is this class still going to help you in the long run? Well, it's having you
mm,
think a different way. It's having
mhm,
you read a textbook that's very
mhm,
different than a community nutrition textbook, which is
mhm,
then
mhm,
causing you to write in a completely unique way that you never had to write things before. And so
mhm,
I think that's another thing too, to go off of what you're saying, where every class you take can be as beneficial as you want it to be. And
mhm,
there are some classes that you for sure want to be more beneficial than the next, because
mhm,
I think a great example, just from my personal experience, is when I took community nutrition in my undergrad. I
mhm,
went in being like, I want to work in community nutrition. I want to get a master's of public health. I want to do epidemiology because I wanted to make a big impact. And I'm like, well, I have to do that in this broad scale public health space.
yeah.
Well, I took community nutrition. It was not what I expected, and it was nothing like what I envisioned in my mind. However, I still applied myself. I still
Mm,
took the core of, well, let me make the most of it. That class and the relationship I got with that professor because I was
Mm-hmm.
like, well, I'm still going to get something out of this. So I just got to know the professor because it was a small enough class. She helped me write an application for an internship that I poured my heart and utter soul into. And I was like, I'm for sure going to get this. I spent at least 15 hours on this application. I did not get it. And
Mm.
this professor who helped me, she was like, Jenna, I saw how much effort you put into this. I have a research assistant who's graduating. Do you want? And honestly, it was like I didn't realize it, but that was pretty much me having her help with this application for another internship turned into my interview with her for this
Mm-hmm.
research assistant for next year. And had I not done that research assistant experience, I would not
Mm-hmm.
be at my university right now pursuing a PhD because that
Come
was
on.
my first dive into research. I wouldn't have
Mm-hmm.
gotten that if I didn't like because again, it's crazy the whole process of you go in thinking one thing, and then if it doesn't go as you plan, you have like two options. You can either be like, well, this isn't what I thought it was going to be, so I'm going to be upset about that fact and just,
Yeah, you can
brunt
very
through.
well.
Yeah, it's like I can just brunt through the semester, call it a day, or then just ask
Yeah.
yourself, okay, well, how can I make the most of this? And
Mm.
again, I definitely like again, success is the combination of hard work and luck. And so I definitely know that not all of it was hard work. It was definitely just right place, right time. But I think everyone for sure has their right place and their right time. It just depends on whether or not we exercise it. But all of this is
Yeah.
just going off of all the great things that you've mentioned. But if you have
Yeah.
anything, yeah, like I also
Well,
don't
let
want to
me
cut you off, but yeah.
no, 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 no. I mean, Discord is beautiful, right? Like think about it like this. Like almost everywhere we have gotten is off of someone else, right? Is because of the opportunity afforded to us by somebody else. Like you had no idea walking into that. That's what would happen. The only reason I ended up on the ASEM board is not because um I accomplished XYZ while I was in my associates or bachelor's or anything. It's that a professor saw my ability that was kind of a natural leadership ability, and I was helping and this was in my food service management class, and the professor of that saw like how much I helped each other or how I always had my voice and opinion and everything. And he's the one who reached out to me and it's like, hey, there's this position on the ASM board. I would like to recommend you for it. And I was like, it's just like everything that we have, you have no idea like who's watching. Yeah, is the class seem like it's going to be irrelevant to you because you may not be going into food service management? I'm sure a large portion of us are not going into that, right? Like, and that's not at all what I thought food service management was going to be like. I'm like, where's the food, right? Like, gosh, and it was just like those little things that you have no idea that are going to contribute most to you, man, they're given to you. Like something comes out of it, and it's beautiful, right? Like with your professor, you poured your heart into something. The professor saw that, and she stuck her neck out in something and had you promoted you for something. Just like my professor saw something in me and promoted me in something, right? So it's just like, gosh, if you give your all at anything that you do, I mean, nothing but good things can come out of it, regardless of the situation, right?
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think it's just been a lot of, I think with what people listening in, it's providing a lot of, I like how we're covering both just overall broad concepts, but also, okay, but like where do you start? It's a
Mm,
very good balance of it's not just what you physically do, but also the mindset that you have going into it.
yeah,
And I think this is a really great foundational episode for, when we go into covering like applying for jobs and the interview process. Like, I
right.
think the theme of this is really, okay, how do you know yourself? How do you know your strengths? How do you know your weaknesses? How do you know what you're worth? Because
Mm-hmm.
those really do drive how
Mm,
everything else kind of matriculates and gets affected in the long term. And so the last kind of overarching question to tie all of these wonderful concepts and topics together is when it comes to, and you could have maybe already mentioned it in this episode, and we just want to end on really hammering it home, but is there the largest lesson or most profound lesson you've learned while studying dietetics? Like that's just really helped get you to where you were? And again, this can be a reiteration or just a summary, and it is very open-ended. So it can honestly just be whatever you want to have students end this episode thinking about.
um, I would say the thing that contributed most to how I ended up here. I can't think of a single portion or area that contributed most to me ending up here. Um, but I think one of the biggest drivers of coming into dietetics has taught me that, research is research. You shouldn't tie yourself or your identity too much into one area or another because, I mean, in research, you can really say anything, right? Like we know the validity of studies, reliability of studies. Like these are all common sentiments, right? The common tests or common statements. Because like I was all one side. Oh, you should go keto or XYZ and all this other stuff. Well, all the nutrition books that I read, I stopped reading almost every nutrition book since I got into my degree. By the way, I don't read any nutrition books, none, unless by the academy. I'm like, man, I'm done with the nutrition books. let me read a book on fiction, please. So what is probably the biggest thing that led me to where I am today is the student organizations. And I mean, across everything that I've done, and I think this is going to help out a lot of people. And did I have time for student organizations? No, but I made time. I made time because these student organizations led me into having the outward appearance to my DPD director that I'm a leader and that I am someone who is capable to be on the ASIN board. Which before that, I mean, I've been on the Texas Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. I was on their officer team, and then the academy, the member and student advisory committee. Like these different committees, these different teams, right? They're all really just an extension of me joining another group of students who had the same mindset or mindsets that I wanted to be like. So it's not even, it doesn't, across the dietetics journey, it wasn't even about the education. It was about the people I surrounded myself with.
Yeah, and I think that is a great note to end on because it starts with you connecting with those around you and surrounding yourself with the people that you want to be, not the people who may bring you down. And yeah, like I think Trenton, this has been a wonderful conversation. And I think literally if anyone flopped this video at any time point, they would get something out of it, even if they just listen for a couple of minutes. But
Mm-hmm.
I hope that the people listening, they got a lot of both actionable steps that they feel like they can take strides towards, whether it's start like sending an email out to your professor, going to their office hours, or like going to a club fair, seeing what club kind of sparks that passion or kind of
Mm.
makes your face light up. And also going to like leaning into the places that feel you like light up and get you
Mm.
excited.
Yep.
Because that's, if you don't know what your passion is, typically leaning into that emotion and that feeling is a good starting
Mm.
point.
Right.
And hopefully people don't feel overwhelmed because really, yeah, like take what you need from this episode because I feel like we've covered a lot of things that different students may need more than other parts.
Mm-hmm.
But I know for a fact that a wealth of knowledge was just bestowed in this past hour. So Trenton, if there's anything else to add, I definitely don't want to hold that out, but yeah.
No, ma'am. I think I got it all.
Heck yeah. Well, thank you so much, Trenton. We will be back for future episodes, specifically covering like job interviews and the things that get dietitians to be represented as dietitians in the profession. So we're super excited for those episodes. But yeah, thank you so much.